All right, there we go.
Are we recording?
We are now recording.
Welcome to episode, was it 5, 6?
I think it's 5.
5, episode 5, I think.
I'll check it when we edit.
We left off, they created Ola and Yavanna created the dwarves and the ents because they're little impatient babies.
And they're like that family that wants a dog as a surrogate for having children.
And due to ambiguous reasons, we won't have our third member here today, but that'll be rectified soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chapter 3 of the Coming of the Elves and the Captivity of Melkor.
All right. Shall I read?
Yeah.
Just
don't destroy the computer.
Don't destroy the equipment.
All right.
Through the long ages, the Valar dwelt in bliss in the light of the trees beyond the mountains of Aman. But all Middle-earth lay in twilight under the stars, while the lamps had shown growth began there which now was checked, because all was dark again. But already the oldest living thing had arisen, in the seas and great weeds, and on the shadow of great trees, and in the valleys of the night-clad hills there were dark creatures, old and strong. To those lands and the forests the Valar seldom came, save only Yavanna and Orome. And Yavanna would walk there in the shadows, grieving because the growth and the promise of the spring of Arda was stayed. And she sat asleep upon many things that had arisen in the spring, so that they should not age, but should wait for a time of awakening that yet should be. But in the north Melkor built his strength, and he slept not, but watched and labored, and evil things that had perverted walked abroad, and the dark and slumbering woods were haunted by monsters and shapes of dread. And in Autumno he gathered his demons about him, those spirits who first adhered to him in the days of his splendor, and became most like him in his corruption. Their hearts were of fire, but they were cloaked in darkness, and terror went before them. They had whips of flame. Balrogs they were named in Middle-earth in later days, and in the dark time Melkor bred many other monsters of divers shapes and kinds that long troubled the world, and his realm spread now ever southward over Middle-earth.
So also the Balrogs will also be called Valoralkar, which is another name they refer to.
Just much better.
Which sounds a lot better than Balrogs, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Especially because it's like, I think it directly means like fiery spirit, so it should be interesting.
All right. And Melkor made also a fortress and armory not far from the northwestern shore of the sea to resist an assault that come from Aman. That stronghold was commanded by Sauron, lieutenant of Melkor, and it was named Agaband. Agnaband?
Angband.
Angband. That is, forget it. It came to pass that Valar held council, for they became troubled by the tidings that Yavanna and Orome brought from the outer lands. And Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, Ye mighty of Arda, and the vision of Iluvatar was brief and soon take away, so that maybe we cannot guess with a narrow count of days. It's Yavanna speaking, so, Yet appointed, yet be sure of this, the hour approaches, and with this age our hope shall be revived, and children, she's Scottish now, and children shall awake. Shall we then leave the lands of their dwelling, desolate and full of evil?
Sounds more Irish.
Nah, it's trust me, it's Scottish.
Okay.
Shall they walk in darkness while we have light? Shall they call Melkor Lord while Manwë sits upon Tanaquentil? And Tulkas.
I can be Tulkas.
Okay, what does Tulkas sound like?
Nay, let us make war swiftly. Have we not rested from strife over long? And is not our strength now renewed? Shall one alone contest with us forever?
But at the bidding of Manwë, Mondo spoke. Ooh, that's a double mon. And he said, In this age the children of Iluvatar shall come indeed, but they come not yet. Moreover, it is doomed that the firstborn shall come in the darkness, and shall look first upon the stars. Great light shall be for their first waning. To Varda ever shall they call it need.
Mondos is the mandatory, ambiguous prophecy character. Although this wasn't. This sort of was the beginning of mandatory, ambiguous prophecy characters in high fantasy.
They needed Mondos to do something.
Yeah.
So, Then Varda went forth from the council, and she looked out from the high of Taniquentil, and beheld the darkness of Middle-earth beneath the innumerable stars. Faint and far, then she began a great labor, greatest of all the works of the Valar since their coming into Arda. She took the silver dews from the vats of Telperion, and therewith she made a new star, and brighter against the coming of the firstborn. Wherefore she whose name out of the depths of time and the labors of Ea was Tintale.
I have no idea if you pronounce both of those L's or not. But
I think it's Tintale.
I'm not going to question it.
I'm just going to say Tintale. The
right.
Kindler was called after by the elves. Eletari, Queen of the Stars. Carnil, Lunil, Nanar, Lumbar, Karnke, Elamire.
You can't be an important character in Middle-earth unless you have a lot of names.
Mm-hmm. She wrought in that time, and many other of the ancient stars she gathered together and set signs in the heavens of Arda. Wilwarn.
It doesn't matter. They're never going to be mentioned again. Just go.
Telamundil, Soromune, Anarima, Menaclam, whatever, with his shining belt that forebodes the last battle that shall be at the end of days. Dun dun dun. And high in the north, as a challenge to Melkor, she set the crown of 7 mighty stars to swing. Valasirka, the sickle of the Valar, and the sight of doom.
I think it would be Valakirka.
Oh,
I think C's in Elvish are pronounced as K's.
But Valasirka sounds so much more cool.
It's like Celeborn sounds cool, but it's actually Celeborn, which is slightly not as cool.
Mm-hmm. It is told that even as Varda ended her labors, and they were long, when first Melamacar strode up the sky, and the blue fire of Helinum flickered in the mists above the borders of the world. In that hour, the children of Earth awoke, the firstborn of Iluvatar, by the starlit Mire.
I think it's pronounced Mir.
Mir.
I'm not sure.
Of Kuvinen. I'm saying Kuvinen. Water of the awakening. Kuvinen. Water of awakening. They rose from their sleep of Iluvatar, and while they dwelt yet silent by Kuvinen, their eyes beheld first of all the stars of heaven. Therefore they have ever loved the starlight, and have revered Varda Elenatari above all the Valar.
I'll pick it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Also, since it's Tolkien, heaven is a just no definite article, no indefinite article. It's just of heaven, because this is an allegory for Catholic nonsense.
It's actually a combination of a lot of different mythologies.
But he was writing it from like a Catholic perspective.
Kinda, yeah. Alright. In the changes of the world, the shapes of the lands and of seas have been broken and remade. Rivers have not kept their courses, neither have mountains remained steadfast. And to Cuivienen there is no returning. But it is said among the elves that it lay far off in the east of Middle-earth, and northward, and it was a bay in the inland sea of Helkar. And that sea stood where aforetime the roots of the mountain of Iluin had been before Melkor overthrew it. Many waters flowed down thither from the heights in the east, and the first sound that was heard by the elves was the sound of water flowing, and the sound of water falling over stone. Long they dwelt in their first home by the water under stars, and they walked the earth in wonder, and they began to make speech and to give names to all the things that they perceived. They named themselves the Quendi, signifying those that speak with voices, for as yet they had met no other living things that spoke or sang. On a time it chanced that Orome rode eastward in his hunting, and he turned north by the shores of Helkar and passed under the shadows of the Orokarni, the mountains of the east. Then on a sudden Nahar set up a great neighing and stood still, and Orome wondered and sat silent. And it seemed to him that in the quiet of the land under the stars he heard afar off many voices singing. Thus it was that the Valar found at last, as it were by chance, those whom they had so long awaited. And Orome, looking upon the elves, was filled with wonder, as though they were being sudden and marvelous and unforeseen, for so it shall be with the Valar. From without the world, though all things may be forethought in music or foreshown in vision from afar, to those who enter verily into Ea, each in its time shall be met unawares at something new and unforetold. In the beginning, the elder children of Iluvatar were stronger and greater than they have since become, but not more fair, for though the beauty of the Quendi in the days of their youth was beyond all other beauty that Iluvatar has cause to be, it has not perished, but lives in the west, and sorrow and wisdom have enriched it. And Orome loved the Quendi, and named them in their own tongue, Eldar, the people of the stars. But that name was after borne only by those who followed him upon the westward road. Yet many of the Quendi were filled with dread at his coming, and this was the doing of Melkor. For by after-knowledge the wise declared that Melkor, ever watchful, was first aware of the awakening of the Quendi, and sent shadows and evil spirits to spy upon them and waylay them. So it came to pass, some years ere the coming of Orome, that if any of the elves strayed far abroad, alone or few together, they would often vanish and never return. And the Quendi said that the hunter had caught them, and they were afraid. And indeed, the most ancient songs of the elves, of which echoes are still remembered in the west, tell of the shadow shapes that walked in the hills above Cuivienen, or would pass suddenly over the stars, and of the dark rider upon his wild horse that pursued those that wandered to take them and devour them. Which is interesting because he really never mentions that ever, except for there. Now, Melkor greatly hated and feared the riding of Orome, and either he sent indeed his dark servants as riders, or he set lying whispers abroad, for the purpose that the Quendi should shun Orome if they ever should meet. Thus it was that, when Nahar neighed, and Orome indeed came among them, some of the Quendi hid themselves, and some fled and were lost. But those that had great courage and stayed perceived swiftly that the great rider was no shape out of darkness, for the light of Aman was in his face, and all the noblest of the elves were drawn towards it. But of those unhappy ones who were ensnared by Melkor, little is known of a certainty. For who of the living has descended into the pits of Autumno, or has explored the darkness of the counsels of Melkor? Yet this is held true by the wise of Eresea, that all those of the Quendi who came into the hands of Melkor ere Autumno was broken were put there in prison, and by the slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved. And thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs in envy and mockery of the elves, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest foes. For the orcs had life and multiplied after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, and naught that had life of its own, nor the semblance of life, could ever Melkor make, since his rebellion in the Ainulindale, hate that word, before the beginning. So say the wise. And deep in the dark hearts, the orcs loathed the master whom they served in fear, the maker only of their misery. This, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor, and the most hateful to Iluvatar.
Alright, I'll pick up. Orome tarried a while among the Quendi, and then swiftly he rode back over land and sea to the Valinor, and brought the tidings to Valmar. And he spoke of the shadows that had corrupted Cuivienen. Then the Valar rejoiced, and yet they were in doubt amid their joy, and they debated long what counsel it were best to take for the guarding of the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor. But Orome returned at once to Middle-earth, and abode with the elves. Manwë sat long in thought upon Taniquentil, and he sought the counsel of Iluvatar. And coming then down to Valmar, he summoned the Valar to the Ring of Doom, and thither came even a Ulmo from the outer sea. Then Manwë said to the Valar, "This is the counsel of Iluvatar in my heart, that we should take up again the mastery of Arda, at whatever so cost, and deliver the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor." Then Tulkas was glad, but Aule was grieved, foreboding the hurts of the world that must come of that strife that he will probably have to fix. But the Valar made ready and came from Aman in strength of war, resolving to assault the fortress of Melkor and make an end. Never did Melkor forget that this war was made for the sake of the elves, and that they were the cause of his downfall. Yet they had no part in those deeds, and they know little of the riding of the might of the west against the north in the beginning of their days. Melkor met the onset of the Valar in the northwest of Middle-earth, and all the region was much broken. But the first victory of the hosts of the west was swift, and the servants of Melkor fled before them to Autumno. Then the Valar passed over Middle-earth, and they set a guard over Cuvinin. And thereafter the Quendi knew nothing of the great battle of the powers, save that the earth shook and groaned beneath them, and the waters were moved, and in the north there were lights as of mighty fires. Long and grievous was the siege of Autumno.
Grievous.
Grievous? I said grievous.
It's grievous.
I said grievous.
What?
I said grievous.
Oh, it's grievous. But okay.
And many battles were fought before its gates, of which naught but rumor is known to the elves. They're out of the loop. In the time, the shape of Middle-earth was changed, and the great sea that sundered it from Aman grew wide and deep, and it broke upon the coasts and made a deep gulf to the southward. Many lesser bays were made between many lesser bays made between the great gulf and Helcaraxe, far in the north, where Middle-earth and Aman came nigh together. Of these the Bay of Valar was chief, and into it the mighty river Simarillion flowed down from the new raised highlands north. Dorthonion, the mountains about Hithalum. The lands of the north were all made desolate in those days, for their Autumno was delved exceeding deep, and its pits were filled with fires and with great hosts of servants of Melkor. But at last the gates of Autumno were broken and the halls unroofed, and Melkor took refuge in the uttermost pit. Then Tulkas stood forth as champion of the Valar, and wrestled with him, and cast him upon his face. And he was bound with the chain of Angainor that Aule had wrought, and led captive. And the world had peace for a long age. Nonetheless, the Valar did not recover all the mighty vaults and caverns hidden with deceit far under the fortress of Agnaband and Autumno. Many evil things still lingered there, and others were dispersed and fled into the dark and roamed the waste places of the world, awaiting a more evil hour. And Sauron they did not find. But when the battle was ended, and from the ruin of the north great clouds arose and hid the stars, the Valar drew Melkor back to Valinor, bound hand and foot, and blindfold, and he was brought to the Ring of Doom. There he lay upon his face before the feet of Manwë, and sued for pardon. But his prayer was denied, and he was cast into prison in the fastness of Mandos, whence none can escape, neither Vala nor elf nor mortal man. Vast and strong are those halls, and they were built in the west of the land Aman. There was Melkor doomed to abide for 3 ages long, before his cause should be tried anew, or he should plead again for pardon.
And I love how it says 3 ages long.
Because apparently this is only going to be a 3-age-long universe.
It says 3 ages long, but they can basically just define an age as however long they want. Because, I mean, they just created the trees and never said this long was an age. They're just like, oh, we'll just let you go whenever we feel like it.
Yeah.
So,
anyway.
Yeah.
Then again, the Valar were gathered in council, and they were divided in debate. For some, and those of Ulmo was the chief, held that the Quendi should be left free to walk as they did in Middle-earth, and with their gifts of skill to order all the lands and heal their hurts. but the most part feared for the Quendi in the dangerous world amid the seats of starlit dust, and they were filled moreover with the love of the beauty of the elves and desired their fellowship. At last, therefore, the Valar summoned the Quendi to Valinor, there to be gathered at the knees of the power and the light of the trees forever. Forever, 2 words, apparently. And Mondos broke his silence, saying, "So it is doomed." From this summons came many woes that afterwards befell.
Alright, well, seems like we're about out of time.
All
so
right.
It's a good place to stop, I think.
Yeah, we're almost done with the that chapter.
So Melkor's been captured and cast out.
And he will never be seen again.
Yeah, he's gone. He will not ever threaten Middle Earth ever again.
Yeah, it's not like we have, like, what, 10 more chapters?
Yeah, the book's about to end, so no. Alright.
Yeah, it's not like we have, like, 10 more chapters of this book. And they all get together and they have tea.